There's lots of other ways that it could not end up even also. It's just one of them.
And some artists intentionally make uneven pots.
Yeah, but they all know how to throw too,
Totally.
right? Okay. All right, so then I'm gonna let my fingers find the center. I do not need to find it with my eyes. I can just let my hands find it. This left hand again is gonna ride the pot. My right hand and I like to link up my right and my left as much as possible every step of this journey, so that I'm always kind of connecting those two sides of my brain. I find it's very useful. Now this part of the clay is very hard and dry because I haven't gotten any water on it yet. Because when I coned, all the outside clay the inside clay went into the center still. It's always in the center, right? And then, does that make sense? So it's always been in the center. It's never had any extra water. And what I'm doing is just pushing straight down with my thumb and middle finger. And sometimes a little like ribbon will come out. That's no big deal. Okay. When I get to the place where I feel like I'm pretty close to where I want to be, which is about the thickness of like this, then I will get the water out, stop the wheel, get my needle tool, and then stick it in the clay, and then slide my finger down and pull it out, and then that's my thickness, where my finger is. That's from there to there, that's how thick it is. So it's actually a good thickness.
Wait, how did you do that?
So I take my needle tool, I stick it in there, I slide this finger down to hit the bottom of my clay, and pull it out. Okay, and that's my thickness. All right, so once I get, that's the thickness I want, so I'm gonna stop going down. Now I'm gonna go towards myself. So I'm gonna have my left hand riding the pot. My right hand is gonna pull towards my body, straight. Try to go straight across the bottom. So how wide should I go? Good question. A lot of the decision about my width of the pot is actually decided long ago when I decided to go down into the clay. The width of that bottom, that's kind of set. So if you want a taller, narrower pot, you start with a taller, narrower kind of form, right? If you want a wider pot, then you start with a wider base. Does that make sense? And you can make that decision sort of after center. You can bring it down or out or wherever you need it. But what I want to stop going towards myself, like pulling the bottom across, when it gets to be, I don't want to go past this outer edge, right? Because if I go past it, then what I'm doing is actually cutting this ring off. And then you'll come up and you'll have just the ring, right? That happens a lot. So you don't want to go past your point outside. And that's kind of the thing you have to do a bunch to be able to feel it. And then once you get, a lot of times it'll kind of make this weird bubble shape. So you can, I close it by two different ways. So the way I was just showing you, I just cup it with my hands and close it. But I'd say a better way, when it's low like this, that works really well. But when it's a little bit taller, it doesn't work so well. So the other way I do it is making like a goalpost and then letting that relax and dropping it around the form and then pushing with my finger. These crooked fingers to make it come in. When the clay is low though, you can also do this. All right, and that works a little better for clay that's a little harder. Okay. So then, again, I just want to reiterate that what I really want you to focus on this weekend is centering. But this is other steps you can also be working on. So to do the next step, I actually want to pull the walls. That's what's called pulling the walls. So I'm going to dig in my finger to give myself a little place. I just put my finger right here and let it dig in to give myself a little place to put my knuckle.
Is this where having nails gets weird?
What was that?
Is this where having nails?
Pretty much the whole time. It's not a big deal. Yeah. So my inside hand is gonna be this kind of open, this shape. And my outside hand is gonna almost make a fist, but this little finger, this my pointer finger, is gonna make kind of a J, and it's gonna slide up underneath the that little bubble that I made on the bottom, that little spot I made. It's gonna slide into that spot. The inside hand is gonna push out just a teeny tiny bit. This clay is so dry that I have to actually give it water in the middle of a pull. And the outside hand is going to follow up the inside hand. So the outside hand is actually slightly lower than the inside hand until I get towards the top, and then they meet, okay?
So are you pushing with both hands the same amount?
I'm pushing less with my inside than my outside. My inside's like pushing out a little, but my outside is actually pushing pretty hard. And you'll have to experiment with that just to figure out your balance. And then I recentered the top by holding with 2 fingers and then pushing down very lightly on the top. If I push too hard, then it gets really wide really fast. Okay, so we don't want to do that. What we're trying to do is make kind of an even cylinder. That's what I'd like you to focus on for this first project, is making these kind of even cylinders, but I'm going to give you a bunch of other things to do. So you'll see how that all works together. But, so recenter the top, get the water out of the bottom, and then start again with the pulling. So you always want to get the water out of the bottom, even though you're adding it back in, because you don't want water sitting in there. If water sits in there, it'll make the bottom weak. So I'm going to push in. Sometimes I get rid of it, sometimes I just push. Do you see how there's kind of a bubble almost above my finger that you can see on the outside? That is my inside finger pushing out. That bubble is actually my inside hand.
Get water out, you just absorb it like a sponge.
Yeah. So now they're switching to be more level. And I'm getting to these dry spots, so I have to add water again. Usually you won't have to add water while you're doing a pull. So the clay is a little bit less dry. So to get water out, usually I squeeze out my sponge and then go in and take out the water that's in there. Recenter the top. Sometimes when the clay is really hard, I'll actually throw with my sponge. It's pretty nice because then you don't have to worry about the water as much. So you can see the bubble again, yeah? Okay, that's my inside hand. Now the bubble's kind of gone because my hands have actually met they're like going just across from each other instead of one above the other. Recenter the top, get the water out.
Do you remember the first time you ever did this?
Oh yes.
Yeah. It was in that
I was so
basement.
frustrated. So just so you know, it took me 6 years
Good.
to learn how to throw. Yeah. So this is the time when I'm going to do the goalpost. I want to make the top a little bit more in because I don't trust it to not just go out on me. Clay likes to, once you get it up here, it likes to go out. It's like really happy to do it. You see how my finger kind of goes bump, bump, bump like that? That's because there's an air bubble.
Learned about those.
Can you get rid of it at this point?
You can get rid of it. I'll show you how to cut the top off. See how tight my elbows are to my body? Pretty good. It's like, I bet sometimes you do have to do this when you get really big to keep your arm, because it's actually up here, right? So you have to do it, but if you can, as tight as you can be, the better, because our bodies are really much more integrated when we're more together and when our hands are touching. Do you notice how much my hands are touching? I'll do one more pull. You guys can see what I mean. See? They're like, where's my friend? I want to find my friend. They just are touching all the time for this whole thing. They just want to be friends. They just want to hang out. Okay.